1. The root of toxic attachment. How many times have you accepted emotional crumbs just to keep someone close? Attachment to toxic people is a deeply common human experience, yet one that is rarely understood in its deeper layers. When we find ourselves trapped in painful relationship cycles, we often attribute our persistence to love or loyalty. But behind this superficial justification lies a complex web of fears, conditioning, and subconscious patterns that keep us bound to those who harm us. At the heart of this dynamic lies a fundamental fear of loneliness, rejection, and the uncertainty that change inevitably brings. This fear is not just a fleeting concern, but a powerful force that shapes our behavior, even when we rationally know the relationship causes us suffering. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic masters, teaches us that when our inner peace depends on someone else's approval or presence, we remain permanently vulnerable to external instability. Toxic relationships hold a particularly strong grip on us due to their emotional intermittency. Unlike consistently negative relationships, which would eventually push us away, toxic relationships operate through an addictive cycle of highs and lows, periods of intense emotional connection, affection, and apparent understanding, followed by coldness, distance, and even contempt. This alternation between reward and punishment creates in the brain a dependency similar to chemical addiction, where the affected person clings to the hope of recovering those rare moments of positive connection. Toxic attachment often disguises itself as noble emotions. We confuse dependency with love, submission with loyalty, and fear of abandonment with devotion. When someone says, "I can't live without this person," they are rarely expressing healthy connection. Instead, they are revealing a dangerous loss of identity and autonomy. Stoic philosophy invites us to critically examine these stories we tell ourselves about our relationships, distinguishing between genuine affection and unhealthy attachment. Our society, paradoxically, often romanticizes this kind of dependency. Songs, films, and popular stories glorify suffering for love as proof of deep passion. This cultural narrative reinforces the confusion between love and pain, normalizing dynamics that should be recognized as harmful. Stoicism, in contrast, offers a more balanced vision. Healthy love expands our inner freedom and capacity to flourish. It does not trap us in cycles of suffering. One of the clearest signs of a toxic attachment is the persistent feeling of energetic scarcity. After interacting with the person, you often feel drained, confused, or diminished. This depletion is not accidental. It's the natural result of a relationship where the balance is broken, where one person's security is fed at the expense of the other's well-being. Another revealing indicator is the constant violation of boundaries. In healthy relationships, we naturally establish boundaries that protect our identity and core values. When we repeatedly tolerate behavior that crosses these lines, emotional manipulation, disrespect, excessive control, or chronic instability, we allow attachment to replace our sense of personal dignity. To identify this pattern more clearly in your own life, consider the following reflective questions. After interactions with this person, do you feel energized or depleted? Have you significantly changed your values or abandoned important goals to maintain this relationship? Do you often find yourself justifying or minimizing behavior that hurts you? Recognizing the cycle of toxic attachment is the first and most essential step toward breaking it. This awareness, though painful at first, is ultimately liberating. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. Suddenly, you can see the obstacles you used to only stumble over. Stoic philosophy offers valuable tools for navigating this process of recognition. The principle of clear distinction, so prized by the Stoics, invites us to separate precisely what is within our control from what is not. The behaviors, feelings, and choices of others are fundamentally beyond our control. Our response to those behaviors, our decisions, and our boundaries, these are within our domain. Marcus Aurelius taught us to see things as they truly are, stripped of the layers of interpretation and projection we add to them. Applied to toxic relationships, this principle invites us to see the other person not as we wish they were, not as they were in the beginning, but as they truly show themselves to be through consistent actions over time. Another powerful Stoic tool in this context is the practice of amor fati, the love of fate, which does not mean passive resignation, but active acceptance of reality as it is, even when it's difficult. Accepting that a relationship is fundamentally toxic is not admitting defeat. It's creating space for new possibilities that remain invisible as long as we cling to what harms us. This acceptance leads us to one of the most transformative questions we can ask ourselves. If you don't let go of what corrodes you, how will you make room for what strengthens you? Every moment we invest in relationships that drain our vitality is a moment we are unavailable for connections that could help us grow and flourish. This is not only an emotional cost, it's an existential opportunity cost. Stoic philosophy does not ask us to be cold or avoid meaningful relationships. On the contrary, it invites us to invest our precious lifetime in bonds that honor our humanity, support our growth, and allow us to cultivate the virtues that give life meaning: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. Toxic relationships inevitably compromise our ability to cultivate those virtues. Remember, recognizing the root of toxic attachment is not a judgment against the other person, but an act of honesty with yourself. It is the first step on a journey of self-knowledge that, though challenging, leads to an inner freedom no toxic proximity could ever offer. 2. Detachment is not a lack of love. The process of stepping away from a toxic relationship doesn't need to be marked by hostility or excessive drama. On the contrary, Stoic wisdom teaches us that the deepest transformations often occur through deliberate, calm, and consistent actions. Detachment can be carried out with firmness and clarity, while maintaining the dignity of everyone involved. There are practical steps that can ease this process of healthy detachment. Gradual reduction of contact. Instead of abrupt breaks, which can intensify emotional reactions, progressively reducing the frequency and length of interactions allows for a more balanced transition. Avoid excessive explanations. The compulsion to justify your decisions often arises from an unconscious feeling that you need permission to set boundaries. Remember, your emotional health doesn't require external approval. Focus on what is within your control. The Stoics emphasize the importance of clearly distinguishing between what we can and cannot control. We can't decide how others will react to our distancing, but we can choose how we will carry out the process. Practice neutral responses. When emotionally provoked, responding with neutrality instead of defensiveness or aggression breaks the drama cycle that often keeps toxic relationships alive. Create new spaces and activities. Building environments and experiences where the toxic person is not present helps rebuild your identity, separate from that relationship. It's important to understand that self-care, far from being selfish, is a manifestation of emotional maturity. When we protect our integrity and well-being, we're not only benefiting ourselves, we're modeling for others, including the person we're distancing from, what it means to establish healthy boundaries. Detaching with compassion is a particularly powerful approach. It means we can choose to walk away without harboring resentment or seeking revenge. We can recognize the other person's humanity, their own struggles, conditioning, and limitations, without making ourselves responsible for their healing or transformation. That same compassion must be extended to ourselves. The process of detachment often awakens feelings of failure, guilt, or inadequacy. Stoic philosophy invites us to observe these feelings with gentleness and reflective distance, acknowledging them as natural responses, not absolute truths about our worth or ability to love. One of the most harmful patterns that keeps people trapped in toxic relationships is the ongoing investment in fantasies of change. If I could just find the right words, if I show more love, if I'm more patient. These narratives, though seductive, often disconnect us from the present reality of the relationship. Epictetus taught the importance of accepting reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. This principle is especially vital in human relationships. Acceptance does not mean passive resignation to abusive behavior. It means honestly acknowledging the consistent pattern of the relationship over time, without clinging to exceptional moments of connection that, while real, do not represent the dominant dynamic. When someone repeatedly demonstrates, through concrete actions, not words or promises, that they do not respect your boundaries, values, or well-being, that person is inadvertently teaching you a valuable lesson about the importance of protecting your emotional integrity. Marcus Aurelius suggested that we should thank those who show us aspects of life we still need to understand. In that sense, toxic relationships, despite their pain, can become catalysts for growth and self-knowledge. The ability to detach without ceasing to love is one of the highest forms of relational maturity. It means recognizing that we can honor someone's intrinsic value, genuinely wish them well, and still choose not to share emotional or physical space with them. This distinction is liberating for us, and potentially for the other person. By stepping away without hostility or manipulation, we create space for them to face the natural consequences of their relational patterns. This confrontation, though possibly painful, offers a growth opportunity that our continued presence and acceptance of toxic behavior might unintentionally prevent. Healthy detachment also allows us to recalibrate our understanding of love. Authentic love is not fusion or dependency, but the meeting of two complete individuals who choose to share their journeys without compromising their individual integrity. When we confuse love with need or fear of loneliness, we miss the chance to experience truly nourishing connections. Ask yourself, what are you really afraid of losing when you walk away? Often, what we fear is not the loss of the real person in front of us, but the loss of the fantasy we created about who they could become or who we were when the relationship began. This fear, though understandable, keeps us anchored in the past or an imagined future, preventing us from fully inhabiting the present. Stoic philosophy reminds us that true freedom lies not in the absence of challenges, but in our ability to respond to those challenges with integrity and wisdom. Detaching from a toxic relationship does not mean avoiding hardship. It means consciously choosing which hardships are worth facing and which ones only drain and diminish us. Remember, detachment is not an admission of failure. It is an act of courage and self-determination. It's the mature recognition that some connections, despite their intensity, do not support our flourishing as human beings. And this recognition, though painful at first, opens the path to relationships that genuinely honor who we are and who we aspire to become. 3. The illusion of emotional dependency. One of the most powerful and persistent illusions that keep us bound to toxic relationships is the belief that certain people are absolutely irreplaceable in our lives. This conviction doesn't appear just as a passing thought. It manifests as a visceral sense that without that specific person, a vital part of our identity and happiness would be permanently broken. Intense emotional attachment distorts our perception, making the other person occupy a disproportionately large space in our inner world. The Stoics identified this as an example of how our mental interpretations, not external facts, determine our well-being. Marcus Aurelius taught that whatever comes from outside, including the presence or approval of others, can be taken away at any moment, and therefore should not form the foundation of our inner security or happiness. This perspective doesn't deny the real value of meaningful human connection, but it invites us to reconsider the nature of emotional dependency. There is a crucial difference between deeply appreciating someone's presence in our life and believing we cannot fully live without them. The first reflects gratitude and genuine affection. The second reveals an imbalance that compromises our existential autonomy. 4. The strength of those who move forward. Stoic philosophy, in contrast to this limiting view, encourages us to cultivate a mindset of abundance. There is a vast field of potential meaningful connections, enriching experiences, and more authentic, freer versions of ourselves that remain inaccessible while we cling to relationships that imprison us. This abundance mindset is not an empty promise that we will instantly find replacements for what we've lost. It is the realistic acknowledgement that life contains multiple paths to meaning and fulfillment, many of which go unexplored while our energy remains entangled in harmful dynamics. It's essential to understand that emotional dependency, like any deeply rooted pattern, does not disappear instantly through a conscious decision or intellectual insight. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics already intuited. Our attachment patterns literally create preferred neural pathways in our brain that continue to fire even after we decide to change. This knowledge invites us to have compassion for ourselves during the detachment process. Relapses, intrusive thoughts, waves of doubt or longing. All of these are natural parts of the journey, not signs of failure or proof that separation was a mistake. Seneca emphasized that virtue lies not in the absence of difficulty, but in the constant and persistent response to it, even when we stumble. Another crucial insight for understanding the illusion of emotional dependency is recognizing the role of the fear of the unknown self. When we stay in a toxic relationship for a long time, our identity often becomes deeply entangled with that dynamic. We become the one who takes care of, the one who pleases, the one who tolerates, or the one who waits. The idea of letting go of these roles, even when harmful, can trigger a temporary identity void that feels deeply uncomfortable. But the Stoics remind us that our true nature is not found in these external conditional roles, but in our intrinsic capacity for rationality, virtue, and conscious choice. Epictetus emphasized that we are not primarily our circumstances or relationships. We are our ability to respond to them with integrity and wisdom. True, healthy emotional bonds do not emerge from fear, need, or manipulation, but from freedom and mutual recognition. Relationships that honor our autonomy and support our growth have a fundamentally different quality than those rooted in dependency and control. They are characterized by genuine respect for individuality, not just tolerance, but authentic appreciation of differences and boundaries, freedom to disagree, the ability to express differing opinions without threatening the safety of the relationship, celebration of growth, support, not resistance, to personal development, personal responsibility. Each person takes ownership of their emotional well-being instead of projecting it onto the other. Voluntary presence. Both choose to stay in the relationship consciously, not out of fear, guilt, or inertia. Remember, emotional dependency, no matter how persuasive, is ultimately an illusion. Our ability to love, grow, and experience joy is not conditional upon the presence of any specific person in our lives. The process of letting go, though difficult, opens the path to a freer, more authentic way of living, not only with others, but most importantly, with ourselves. Stoic wisdom teaches us that true freedom lies in our ability to respond to challenges with integrity. Keep this in mind. Every moment you invest in relationships that drain your vitality is a moment you are unavailable for the connections that could help you flourish. The path won't be easy. There will be doubts, relapses, and moments of uncertainty. Have compassion for yourself during this process. As Seneca taught, virtue is not in avoiding hardship, but in choosing how we face it, consistently and with dignity, even when we stumble. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect, freedom, and shared growth. Letting go of what harms you is what allows space for what strengthens you. This is your journey toward inner freedom, a difficult road, but a profoundly transformative one. What has been your greatest challenge in trying to detach from toxic relationships? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications for more insights on personal growth and practical wisdom for everyday life. See you in the next video.